Hello, everybody, and we are live. We had a nice artisanal delay today because we're making some pizza. This is Jumpsuit Utopia, an exploration of the utopian themes in Star Trek. We have a nice full panel for you today. Just the classic lineup, as usual. I've got my co-host Sophie.
Hi, I'm Sophie.
Hi. We got Kyle from General Intellect Unit.
Hello.
And last but never least is Chief Tom O'Brien.
I'm sitting here wearing my Star Trek dress uniform.
Damn
Yay!
right.
True hero of labor.
That season 1 TNG, kilt uniform that never quite caught on. That got Rick Berman out of existence.
I like that one.
That was
Solid.
pretty cool, honestly.
Same.
It was awesome. Like, I wish Roddenberry, kicked it up, like lived a little longer. TNG would have been gayer.
Agreed. I also think it's also interesting when you look at those old episodes of TNG. It was always the most like Chad men wearing those, which like just made me so happy.
Yeah. So, gayer is maybe even the wrong word. It's just maximum autonomy within this weird, within this normie kind of like cis paradigm sort of thing. But it allowed for a lot of potential, non-conforming stuff within it. Maybe that's it could have anyway. God, I love chocolate. Okay. So we watched the episode Nepenthe from Picard season 1 episode. Is it really episode 7? Episode 7. We're deep in this, people. We've only got like 3 episodes before we wrap season 1. And this time we end up on a planet named after a drug in Homer's Odyssey as banishing grief or trouble from a person's mind, Nepenthe. This episode gives us the return of beloved TNG main cast members William Riker, Jonathan Frakes as William Riker, and Marina Sirtis as Deanna Troi. I guess they're both Troi Rikers now, perhaps. And yeah, it's lovely to see this couple that was always a will they, won't they thing through TNG. And they tied the knot in the TNG movies. And Riker and Troi always had what seemed like a polyamorous relationship, even though canonically they weren't seeing each other during the main episodes of The Next Generation. Just felt that way.
Yeah, I think with Troi and Riker, they seem to have what would perhaps now be considered like a type of polyamorous relationship, because like in American culture, and probably more broadly like Anglo culture, like it's not appropriate for people who are friends, especially a male and female friend, to like kiss and to like be as physically close as they were, but they did that kind of stuff all the time. But they weren't explicitly dating, they were just friends. And they would often be involved in other relationships and be like really close to one another physically while talking about these relationships, because they just had that kind of closeness, kind of like they'd be like considered platonic in like a kind of platonic romantic relationship.
Yeah, it's part of that like wokeness that Roddenberry was going to without troubling gender naturalism, possibly.
Yeah, it got really close to the mark, but of like something truly sexually liberatory, and takes a step back from that, and then Rick Berman pushes it down the flight of stairs.
Oh, Rick.
Oh.
The fingerprints of Rick over so many bad decisions.
Yeah.
You can't have gayness, Morty.
Oh, God. You're phobic, Rick. Okay. Should we just get down to Whole Foods Riker? Because we're already on the topic. And that seems to be maybe
totally.
like the cut of the overall political jib to what is overall a very, familial, close, and intimate episode where, for the most part, we're spending our time at, Casa de Troy Riker out in the nice countryside of Nepenthe. Now, Nepenthe is a planet known for its regenerative properties in the soil. You see that no replicators here. We have basil and tomatoes grown in the garden. We have fresh bunny corn sausage, which are these little unicorn bunnies that are hunted for food by the by the Troy Riker daughter, the lovely character. Her name is Kestra. Oh my gosh, she's like a little Pacific Northwest cherub that could have been plucked from the Adventures of Pete and Pete.
I get big Willow vibes from Kestra.
Oh, yeah, and yeah, we're in this organic food paradise. Why are we here? Well, whenever you see a beloved character come back in Star Trek Picard, you need to wait for the other shoe. You need to wait for the other shoe to drop because they know you love that character and they're going to hurt you with it. So the big tragedy that befalls the Troy Riker family is the death of their firstborn child, Thaddeus Riker, Thaddeus Troy Riker. And Thad had a condition that was some kind of sclerosis. I wrote it down because, these details are very important, obviously.
Mandaxic.
Yes, that's right. Thad had mandaxic sclerosis. Now, the cure to mandaxic sclerosis is fairly simple. As a silicon-based disease, MN is very treatable as long as you culture cells in a silicon, in a positronic matrix. However, the Federation ban on synthetics made it impossible to put together this very simple cure, which damned Tad to an early death. And this is such a mind-bending situation to have happened in Star Trek that, the only parallel I can think of is something like the stem cell ban during the Bush administration, that put a halt to a bunch of very promising medical research at the time. For what seemed like, really strange reactionary, ethical quote reasons. And the idea that in Star Trek, where you could replace somebody's heart completely, like, Picard mentions how he had his heart replaced in Tapestry, the TNG episode. I mean, he didn't say I had it replaced in TNG, but he said, they replaced my heart. Like, you better aim for the head, little Kestra. When you're dressed up as a high elf or something, a wood elf. Anyway, so like the idea that they couldn't cure this very simple disease because of this reactionary ban, and the Troy Riker clan lost a child out of it, is devastating, and the personal is political moment in this series. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, so ever since I saw the previews with Riker and Troy, and it's revealed in the trailers that at some point Picard is going to come to them for help. And then I started watching the early episodes and got a clear sense of like how, far from grace the Federation has fallen. My immediate thoughts were, how loyal are they to the Federation? How loyal are they to this regime? Even if they were loyal, I don't foresee them being the kind of people to turn Picard in. I think they would always be as loyal to Picard, if not more so. But what the subtext of that line and that scene with Troy, to me, shows that Troy and Riker are not very loyal to the Federation anymore. Now, technically, Riker is still on active reserve, but he said it would have to be something really good for me to come out of retirement. And so it seems like Troy never advanced beyond commander, which was a good thing that she went commander in TNG, but kind of disappointing she never became captain. But there might be a reason, like she might have been disillusioned after her son died. And it seems like the disillusionment has definitely not been only with Picard, if that makes any sense,
Mm-hmm.
So she didn't come out and say that, but that was just underneath the surface. And I think that makes the case of how willing they would be to help Picard. I mean, Riker basically says it verbatim, It was interesting also to see how much the critiquing of Picard happens here too, actually. You would think that Picard seeing, two friendly faces, he would, besides Hugh, he would be, they would stop critiquing him. But even, Troy and Riker are engaging in that. Troy more so. Troy was a bit more brutal, but Riker said something to the effect of, once he figured out what the deal is, pretty quickly put together that Soji is an android, Soji is in danger by the Tal Shiar, and Soji is Data's daughter. He's like, oh, leave it to Picard to, arrogantly decide who gets to be in the loop, who gets to help out. It was the exploration. The show is ultimately about Picard, and it's about a man of regret and a man trying to finish his life's work. And what was really telling was that line where Picard said something to the effect of, like, he was talking to Soji and trying to convince Soji, who's been traumatized, to trust him. And the thing that he says is that I was a man full of regrets, just wasting my life away, waiting to die, basically. And now that I have a mission, nothing's going to stop me. Not you, not anything. Even at that point, when he's trying to convince Soji to trust him, it's still about him, right? This isn't about I'm helping Data's daughter. I'm helping, that's part of it, right? But in that moment, he's more honest, which is probably good that he didn't lie to her. She would probably tell, but like, it's still a very selfish motive at the end of the day, I
mean, maybe. And yeah, he's kind of a dick about, not being trusted, but like, yeah, there's definitely something about the way of absolute candor and that stuff. But what about the Federation? What about like the synth ban? Like, how does that's the thing. That's like the major political theme in this episode. And there's like kind of a section of themes being gestured towards with the homeworld stuff that I know Kyle has a lot to say about.
Yeah. Should we go there? Should we talk a little bit more about the Federation's politics? Because we've said it, right? The personal is political is really the theme there. Like that, yeah, the synth ban was very rash. And the consequences are more far-reaching than you'd initially expect, right? Like you might think, like, oh yeah, we don't have synthetic people work at Utopia Planitia anymore, so there's going to be problems there, and there's issues with the relocation, but things like medical research get affected as well. Not just Dr. Girardi's research, but beyond that to like research that matters to children. And I guess it's a very interesting way that these that theme is brought up, because as you said, like, the Troy Rikers really go very Whole Foods. They're living in NorCal with their hippie life.
Planet NorCal.
And what's that?
Planet NorCal. Sorry.
Planet NorCal. Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah. And growing all organic foods and, LARPing as wood elves and stuff like that. But at the same time, Riker still has like the shields set up and there's still a computer in the house. So it's not like full on primitivist, but like there is a kind of way it's like, well, we can't use a positronic matrix to help Thaddeus. So we're just going to go like organic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, because you need a big interconnected like society in order to make use of the fruits of technology in a big way, right? Like, and if you can't do that, when people feel disempowered in that big technological society that has all these resources, they have to fall back on something that's more in their control, so they can go, move out to the country and like, eat organic tomatoes that they grow or whatever. And even though that's not going to solve it, it's not going to cure the MN. Like, the cure is out of reach for society, for social reasons, for societal reasons, like for political reasons, ultimately.
Yeah, so like it really seems as though the decision they made and the way that they've chosen to live their lives following Thaddeus's death has a lot to do with their grieving process. It's not as though, like, I don't think they really believe there's something inherently superior about living this way. It's more like they're coping with their alienation by living this way, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like it's a reaction.
There's also the element or the line where Troy is talking to Soji, trying to like basically convince Soji that it's okay to be an android. It doesn't make you any less of a person. And she says something to the effect of, real is not always better. And this is like right after Soji tastes a real, quote unquote, tomato for the first time. First time he's ever had anything that was non-replicated.
Those heirloom tomatoes, I mean, I know they cost like 10 times as much and look like an H.R. Geiger eyeball, but wow.
Well, all I can say, I grew some heirloom potatoes there a couple of years ago. They were called Shetland Blacks, and they were purple. When you cut them in the middle, they had a purple ring in them. And they got discovered on a Shetland island. Somebody was on a remote one. They just noticed, is that a potato growing there? And they brought them back and they cultivated them. And they were the fucking tastiest potatoes I've ever eaten in my goddamn life. So I'm well up for this permaculture fucking world.
Nice.
None of those replicated potatoes for you, Tom.
No.
Flowery balls of joy. And the other thing I'd say is like that they might have gone all permaculture, but that didn't stop Deanna Troi getting new lips.
Yeah. Godspeed. Real isn't always better.
Seriously. Like Precious, my missus has never watched Star Trek, and she was like, who's she? What has she done to her face?
Oh. I think she looks lovely.
Yeah. She looks great.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Do you not think that? Okay. Am I being bad here? Am I being bad?
Yeah. Yeah.
Why am I being bad again? I don't know.
Because real isn't always better, Tom. That's why.
Right.
I don't know.
I mean, if I'm being more honest, like I would totally get a lot of work done if I could, but I don't think I would ever do lips. For me personally.
If I was in post-scarcity utopia, you better believe it. And,
Oh yeah, 100%. I would look completely different. My face wouldn't look that different, but my body would certainly look very different.
I mean, we're primates in post-scarcity utopia means everyone gets crazy amounts of work done. I'm telling you.
Oh God, no! I'd hate to have work done.
Ah,
Seriously.
yeah, I'm sure you'd hate to have like if your body was much more like you'd like it to be, you'd hate that. I'm sure.
No, I mean like aging. About aging. It's about aging. It's not about like. Yeah, I'll shut up.
No. I mean, all right. There's something we said for the allowing people to age with dignity and not expecting them to look like a young person all the time and whatever. And there's lots of pressures, but like I don't know. I think
Joan Rivers died getting fucking her. I don't know something done, didn't she?
Yeah, you always take a risk when you go under the knife.
That's true.
Yeah, it's certainly more complicated. We're just razzing your jimmies, but I also think I'm pro.
What happened to my T card?
Oh, that's been revoked a long time ago.
I mean, you started going about plastic surgery. You're talking to the wrong people.
Yeah, you definitely are.
Yeah. Oh dear.
Like
I would say though that like it's ambiguous like in the relationship that they have to technology, the family. It's really ambiguous because they're all permaculture, but then Troy says real isn't necessarily better, and then we could talk about the whole thing with Thaddeus and his like kinda maybe blood and soil politics.
Well, those things probably seem a lot less threatening when they're the idle dreams of a boy raised on a xenocosmopolitan starship, where the idea of a home planet is like an antique curiosity.
Well, it's more than that, though, actually. It isn't an antique curiosity. What it really is he was raised in like the most cosmopolitan environment imaginable. And the thing that made him interested in the concept of a homeworld was primarily meeting all these different cultures, all these different people, including his own parents. One's Betazoid, one's human, right? Earth, Betazoid, right?
Yeah.
It's true. It's true. It is alive and well. I guess from the perspective of Thaddeus, growing up, it must have been like weird. So you're saying that all these people come from these like, ethnically delineated areas, these like spheres. They're not just all mixed up on a big vessel floating around.
Right. Exactly. That was the thing that was so unique to him, because his homeworld really has no soil. It's a starship. It's like not ethnically delineated. It's all mixed. And so to us, blood and soil seems like a very, I shouldn't even say blood and soil, but like that idea of like an ethnically a piece of land that has some kind of tie to a people's seems kind of retrograde, right? And the futuristic kind of perspective would be like a floating ship that has all kinds of different species and cultures within it. But the Thaddeus, who was raised on that, like it was something that would just kind of blew his childish mind. I mean, I don't know. Yeah. The other thing that this kind of made me think of was like I had a friend who's Navajo, and he left the reservation, and he kept saying like he wanted to go back, like he felt like a calling to go back. There is like that aspect of it too. It isn't always just like Nazis or something who want blood and soil, but like a land that has been in among like had roots for a people for like generations and generations, going back to pre-colonialism. So I don't know.
Blood and soil, like in terms of metaphors in human culture, like the idea that there's some kind of connection between the stuff of your life and the stuff of the ground is it's pretty common. Now, the thing about ideology is that it plugs into circuits that might already be there, or it extrapolates from things that might be kind of true in a way, at least historically. And so yeah, like blood and soil is the the ultimate expression of taking this like naturalistic fallacy of like the way we've traditionally lived is a good way, like, but I think there's a dialogue being had in this episode, because in a way, they kind of get their homeworld in Nepenthe. Like, Thad gets to like find a home on a world, and that's the thing that they did essentially as a grieving process, and part of making his dream come alive. But even though there's that like longing, the show is also like the tragedy of it being so simple to cure this disease. They have the technology to cure this disease, and to not do it for political reasons. It breaks the future. If this advanced society can't save our child, what good is this kind of society? Fuck it. I might rely on its technology to protect my family, Shields up. Like Alexa has a shields up function in the Troy Riker household.
Yeah, I never really... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
But yeah, like, the whole thing about humanism and like is, maybe you could prevent a bunch of preventable death. You can like save and prolong lives and make them more pleasurable. And the synth band dashed that for that Troy Riker.
In today's light, remember everybody to wash your hands for 20 seconds at a go.
Yeah. Don't touch my face specifically.
If you if you like, give the monologue at the beginning of the TNG theme song, that's approximately 20 minutes or 20 seconds. I'm not even joking.
Wait, what do you mean?
The monologue at the beginning of the TNG theme, if you recite that monologue, that's 20 seconds. If you recite that monologue while you're washing your hands, it's 20 seconds.
Oh, thank you for connecting the thought.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to say something. It just was funny to me. Like, I never had the sense that, like, talking to the computer was like talking to Alexa until I saw Riker talking to his home computer. It felt very Alexa to me. And so it just was like, I just kind of was laughing to myself thinking of asking Alexa to raise shields,
If you could get a home security system and attach it to Alexa and use shields up as a command.
Who is Alexa? Who is Alexa? Who has Alexa? Do you have Alexa? Sophie?
A bunch of our listeners probably have Alexa, and they're probably very mad right now. Alana.
Sophie, do you have Alana?
Do you have Alana?
Oh yeah, don't say Alexa because we could be activating people's shit all the time right now.
I do not have she who must not be named.
Yeah. I don't have an Alana computer either.
Alana's spying on me, and so is Goofle. But who
Goofle,
isn't? Microsoft.
Goofle's always spying on us. That's just, you can't escape that.
You didn't turn on Cortana. Cortana's not happening.
For some reason, just for going through the 90s, or the late 90s that I can recall as myself as being formed, I just just don't trust Microsoft for some reason. It's very irrational, and like I developed these privacy preferences, and then the world changed and ate my privacy anyway. But I still don't have the heart to give my info to Microsoft. They probably protect it more than Google or Amazon does. No.
What do you call it? I built a voice recognition system in about 2002 for a bank I was working for, and I fucking hate voice recognition. There's no way I will ever fucking talk to a computer. Ever.
I would if it was like Star Trek.
Now, wasn't there? There was a lot of hatred in that.
Yeah, wow, that's very robophobic. Jesus Christ, Tom. It's 2020.
I think I'm going to... I should be in the Vosh, what the fuck are they called?
Jot Vosh.
The Jot Vosh. I think I'd probably be landed for that.
So the lines are drawn. The way of absolute candor has led me to you.
Damn.
Please, friends, choose to live.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Please comrade. Please, comrade. Choose to live.
Is that what Solon said to Bakarin before he killed him?
Damn.
Please, comrade, choose to live. And then Bakarin says, "Must I die for you, Koba?"
Oh my god.
Anyway, this is a good segue maybe into.
Well,
sorry.
hang on. Like,
Kyle.
okay, so I just want to like talk a little bit more about this whole thing about the homeland and myth and all that kind of stuff, because to maybe give Thaddeus a little bit less of a pass, he reminds me very much of a stock character type that you get in Ian Banks's culture novels. Because the culture is very much like the starships that Thaddeus grew up on, right? It is a cosmopolitan set of stations and starships that just kind of move around and don't have any connection to any given place. And they're very radically malleable as a culture. They're constantly changing, and you get these characters in Banks's books which react to that radical cosmopolitanism, who try to find something fixed in other cultures, often quite reactionary cultures. And Banks typically mocks these characters mercilessly. He understands the draw that is there, but he also kind of like often problematizes that draw by showing the sort of privileged position that those characters rely on to engage in this kind of exoticism or myth making or self-alienation from the culture, and the kind of problems that exist in that move. So, it's like one of the characteristics of the culture is that it's constantly dealing with these kind of boundary problems, and never really coming down on them one way or another, because, acknowledging they exist, but then also acknowledging that the reaction to them is problematic. So, I mean, I think we can kind of see Thaddeus in a kind of similar lens. He's this very Tolkien figure, right? Like, he's trying to create a Middle Earth. He's using linguistics and myth to draw together this kind of fantasy world. And I don't think that... I don't know. I just would say that it's not clear to me that this is totally unproblematic, but very understandable, given his life story. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like, he invented like 11, 12 like languages and created these like elaborate fictions to like, in part to help him through his very short life, So if he was a little like proto, NRX or something like, like proto one of those reactionaries or that you would get in the culture, maybe he would have matured out of it. You know what I mean? It seems like an understandable curiosity for a starship kid.
Yeah,
it's interesting that they bring this up because it's something that the culture deals with a lot and Star Trek deals with very little. So I'm just interested in the fact that they finally kind of address this topic in Trek.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things that, like, how do I say this? I think sometimes with children you get this kind of tendency to pick up on these kind of naturalistic fallacies that Esri was like referring to, that seem kind of like an easy heuristic to buy into, and just have like a childlike curiosity about it. I don't think there was, on the part of the character himself, I don't think there was an explicit like longing for blood and soil and like the kind of fascistic sense, but more so just the kind of childlike curiosity that he had about it, as something that he didn't really have. He has lineages of Beta Z and Betazoid and human, but he doesn't have his own, and he was really curious about that. I mean, in a lot of ways, Troy doesn't, as far as like inheritance goes, like she's half human, like, she just happened to be born on Beta Z, but it isn't even uncomplicated for her,
I don't know. I thought Thaddeus struck me as an out-and-out fascist.
Yeah, isn't that the overwhelming sense that you get from the episode when watching it? It's like, damn.
Yeah.
This kid's a big fan of Quark's Holovlog.
Yeah.
This dead child is clearly a fascist.
Yeah. They would go like, Alexa, check search history, and then it comes up Stormfront.
No, I think he'd be one of those cool like Twitter reactionaries, like confused young kid who's just a really good like xenoanthropologist. Like,
okay, I guess so. Definitely would not call Thaddeus a fascist, but it's hard. Like, so I was recently in New Zealand, right, and that's where Lord of the Rings was, filmed, and it was an enormous cultural production. Had a very significant effect on the economy and the culture of New Zealand in the time that it was there. Like, you get into Wellington Airport and like they have these giant like dragon figures and like Gandalf's hawk and all that stuff. And in the course of the production of The Lord of the Rings, it's very interesting how the CG work that was done to produce Middle Earth involved erasing all of the native vegetation of New Zealand and presenting the indigenous people there as orcs. That was the casting that was done. So having seen the way in which this kind of, or in the way in which Tolkien's fantasy, interacts with real life and modernity, erase, like like I was walking along a ridge in Wellington, and then, my partner was like, oh yeah, this is that scene from The Lord of the Rings. It's just that all of the buildings there have been erased from the picture. Having gone through that experience, I just couldn't help but bring up the way in which these kinds of Tolkien-esque fantasies are sort of, they have an uncomfortable relationship with a lot of things.
Not to mention Tolkien himself as a figure.
Yeah, totally. Absolutely.
Well, but like New Zealand, Kiwis are famously think, like my experience, they all think like, oh, in New Zealand we don't have class. And then you say, well, what about the Maori population? And they're like, it's kind of shocking.
Yeah, fucking.
Oh yeah, I mean,
I've had that exact conversation.
God damn it!
Like probably 10 times with New Zealand people.
That's yeah.
Face your settler roots. Anyway, I mean that's this is why I like sci-fi so much better than fantasy. Sorry, fantasy fans, but
same actually.
I can never help but feel like fantasy just feels so retrograde and reactionary, just underneath the surface, honestly.
Yeah, and like as someone who has engaged with like, the legacy of Tolkien my whole life, like playing tabletop RPGs, reading these books is all part of what I grew up with. I've written fantasy games. It's just something that always makes me really uncomfortable, and I'm always trying to think about critically, because you're absolutely right. Like, there is something reactionary in it.
Sure, and I think much like you, Thaddeus probably would have, like Esri said, probably would have grown out of that. Like, would have as he matured, would have like kind of examined these unfortunate aspects of fantasy, and maybe not even abandon like writing myths and languages and stuff, but kind of like tackle that in a more direct sort of way. Like a lot of DMs who do Dungeons and Dragons campaigns, for example, will like kind of explicitly bring out like this like conflict of like, you know, and using fantasy as like a way to explore like subtler and anti-colonial struggles in like a fantasy setting, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I mean, there's got to be a way to, you know, subvert the sort of fantasy setting, because science fiction is certainly subverted in the, you know, retrograde direction quite a bit, like the way that ethnoi is just deposited on planets in Star Trek, and you have one language for one people on one planet. They've done a better job of like complicating things, like more recently, I think, in Discovery in particular. Like when there was like this, I don't know, in one of the episodes of Star Trek Discovery, the final one in season 1, Will You Take My Hand? We go to Kronos, and the first people you see there are Orions, and you get a sense of different people that live on Kronos. You know what I mean? Like, and then they have this whole like anthropological thing about, you know, Kronos versus Kronos. And anyway,
Yeah.
Well, you also have with Saru's people, you have like a literal like story about one race on a planet eating another race. Like,
right.
It doesn't get much more explicit than that, you know?
Yeah, that's an even better example. And you know, essentially, you see Saru's people, you know, take over, you know, spoilers for Discovery, of course, you know, take over that planet and hijack the technologies from their oppressors, and they become their fighters. You know, it becomes the ship that the prey species pilot, you know, like, or I guess it was complicated. They had a very complicated predator prey dynamic in that show too.
No, it really was, because the Kelpians, which is Saru's people, you know, before they were oppressed and kept down in this very explicit way, there was a constant struggle between them and the Baul, who was the, you know, the predator species in Discovery, because once the Kelpians get to a certain point of maturation, they become incredibly strong, aggressive, and violent, and they could become the predators themselves. And so,
seriously, any race, any like alien race that's called the Kelpians, they surely should have made them more seaweed-like.
Well, what bothered me about their design at first is that they had forward eyes, and that's like usually an evolved predator trait. And then Discovery did that twist, and it's like, oh shit, they are predators.
Wow, that's a good spot.
Yeah, they should have had like eyes on their sides if they were a prey species.
Yeah, that's totally true, and they really are predators. They just have to reach a certain point of maturation.
Vaharai.
Exactly. I feel like we kind of got into
this has been our disco mini cast.
Yeah, we should at some point tackle Discovery. Maybe not episode by episode. Maybe like chunks of episodes, because you know how it be. Anyway, moving on. I want to touch and revisit our discussion of the Romulans, the poor Romulans, and their terrible suffering. Now,
speaking of fascists,
a terrible tragedy.
I don't need she who must not be named to tell me that those Romulans are fascists.
Right. You know, we are ass deep in Romulans for the rest of our lives, like Picard. Because
I forgot about that line.
We've gotten caught up in the Romulan anti-imperialist struggle. But there's just one thing. The Romulans are slavers still. And they send their secret police to massacre the XBs. And Narek's sister, I guess, let's call her Rizzo. Because why not? No, but how are you going to know her name? Rizzo has a firing squad to execute the XBs that Hugh has done so much to reconstruct in front of him, to ploy him to pry his mind open and get the information about where Picard and Soji went. And then during a fight, between Elnor and her, that's seems to be shaping up to be a classic, like, hand-to-hand martial arts duel. She throws a knife into Hugh's neck, and he dies in Elnor's arms.
Yeah, that was devastating, honestly. I thought Hugh was going to be a going concern for Star Trek Picard, but like a reoccurring side character. But rip Hugh.
It looks like they've wrapped up the Cube arc. I don't think it's going to come up again. And so, yeah.
Did you see the preview for next episode?
Oh, really? Oh, no, right. Yeah, that's right. Because,
So
Right.
after things really go to shit, Elnor hides out and has the little Fenris Rangers SOS tag and clicks it. And so an XB is coming. An XB is coming in the form of 7 of 9 to the Borg cube. And it's been stated that you need an XB to operate the Borg Queen Express to pop out of there, quickly.
Yeah.
The preview seems to showcase that things go to shit. It almost hints that the Borg get reactivated
and that 7 of 9 might be the Borg Queen or something.
Well,
damn.
Well, because she has to interact with the Borg Queen cell in order to launch the Borg Queen Express.
Well, there's a couple ways that this goes down. My sense watching the preview was that 7 of 9 accidentally gets the Borg cube reconnected to the collective. So the Borg that haven't been successfully deborged get reconnected to the collective and become aggressive, and then so it becomes XB versus B. Or alternatively, you get kind of like that Voyager episode where there's the cooperative, not the collective, a bunch of XBs in a Delta Quadrant who get disconnected from the collective and have their own mini cooperative where they share thoughts, but it's like a more egalitarian version of that, Yeah,
it's like left-wing collectivism.
Yeah, it's like space Bordegism versus space Stalinism, or
basically it's more like autonomy, leftcom, kind of like collectivism.
Yeah, it's a cooperative, not a collective, and so I'm thinking we might get that in the next episode where instead of Borg Queen, 7 of 9 becomes Borg.
First console.
Yeah, Borg first console or Borg chairperson, Yeah. Chairwoman 7 of 9 takes over.
Look, if the Borg People's Republic is gonna show the Federation what's what, I'm here for it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we've really gone into this. I don't think we've really gone into this that much, but the Borg, at least in 7 of 9's depiction, the writers were drawing a lot from people who have recovered from cults. So, and in another Voyager episode, there's like a direct comparison made between like 20th century totalitarianism and the Borg. So what I'm saying is that these, Romulan fascists are deprogramming and enslaving a bunch of ex-communists. Okay? The Borg is like it's like these XBs, they've been, corrupted and victimized by a totalitarian, cult empire.
So who's Gary Kasparov in this then?
That was probably, I don't know, Hugh. I'm not sure. Did we see Hugh play any board games?
Hugh is good. Hugh is good.
That's true. Leave Hugh alone. Hashtag.
Gary Kasparov is such a douchebag. It's incredible.
See, I know dick about Gary Kasparov. I just know that he was in a boxing match with a robot or something. That's something like that. Just kidding.
Yeah, we need our like. I'm waiting for that deep blue boxing machine to come in and like slice somebody's head off.
Yeah, the
superior.
Yeah, the Tal Shiar just have a big monument to Gary Kasparov as you walk in. Just remember his sacrifice.
The one good human.
Yeah, never forget Big Blue.
So yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm here for it if we're gonna get like fucking left com Borg taking on the Jean Vache and the Federation.
Yeah. Comrade 7 of 9.
We can dream. We can dream.
We can dream. We can dream. I do feel like it's there though. The Borg are totalitarian collectivist cultists in a big imperial form that's super like, if you think gentrification is bad, then you'll hate the Borg. Like, then and then there's these like kind of weaponized leftcom versions of this sort of thing.
Yeah.
All right, we can move on. We can move on from my little pet project of trying to draw out. I don't know. I mean, Leninism is cults, right? Like,
yeah, like I don't think it's much of a stretch. I really don't think it's much of a stretch.
Like so my headcanon is that 7 of 9 is like a cyborg and has like a new name, and so is trans, right? And also it just left a cult, so is like an ex-Leninist, right? So, throughout Voyager, she's like learning how to have a self and like trying to be a person instead of like a useful part of a collective. And instrumentally disposable part of a collective as one, that's the most interesting thing, is that that's how the Borg ends up. And they secretly have kind of like a big hedonistic leader who just experiences everything that everybody else doesn't, in the Borg.
Damn.
It's like 1-for-1 Leninism, honestly. Like a Leninist sect.
Yeah. Yeah, you have some like decadent ass like, bish running shit, and who's allowed to have all the personality and all the pleasure, and everyone else is a disposable drone.
Damn.
It's so true. Yeah, I mean, and like a good modern replication or comparison to Leninism, the Borg Queen is a woman, and is very, very awful to everyone, women and men alike.
Yeah. So that's I'm really happy to put this headcanon in everyone's head before the next episode. I can't wait to see where it goes.
Yeah, I kind of think whatever happens, 7 of 9 seems incredibly concerned about it, so I don't think it is going to be 7 of 9 becoming the chairwoman of the left communist opposition or something, but...
Well, yeah, I don't know. It's just she'll have to operate the Borg Queen cell if Elnor wants to jump to Whole Foods Riker.
Oh god, just imagine La Serena...
Whole Foods.
Oh,
yeah,
Lord.
well, it'll be a leftcom Primo alliance, It's like a communization sort of thing.
Oh my god, please help us, Lord.
Yeah, the Troy Riker tendency, okay? And
the Troy Riker line.
Yeah.
Then you get the Thaddeus Troy Riker Nazgul outcome.
Oh,
Oh
no.
God. Well, hey, he had a romantic cause, okay?
Rip.
Okay.
Yeah, and then you have the Artifact Liberation Front. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, XP's National Liberation Movement.
Yeah. Well, seriously, what's left of them? Like the Disordered, and I don't know how many other XPs like that have been reclaimed there are. Like
No.
it seemed like there was a lot of them that were killed.
There was that line at the beginning when Hugh was being interrogated, and then from all that I recall, Eleanor and Hugh were making plans to get to the Queen Cell when Rizzo popped up, and so I don't think that they didn't display like a lot of dead XBs. There was that line that they murked in front of Hugh, and that was it, as far as I could tell. Maybe I'm misremembering that.
Well, it's just the dialogue made it seem like there, wasn't any more. But like, I don't think that they showed that, so I'm not sure how to respond.
I'd have to rewatch it, but I kind of got the sense that it wasn't so much that she already killed them, but that they were disposable to her, and that she hates them. She hates them. She hates Hugh.
She hates the cube. She hates the whole fucking thing.
Right.
I mean, of course, because these people are cyborgs.
Oh yeah,
Like,
they're
what's
disgusting
more
to her.
contemptible to the Jat Vache than
Right.
cyborgs? Products of unholy miscegenation.
Rip. I do want to kind of touch on Dr. Girardi before we wrap up,
Yes.
and we're getting close to the hour mark.
That's true. To continue our dialogue about, whether she's got like a long game or whether she's just a very confused Babby. I think the show is doing a good job of doing like a sort of double, like making it possible to see her in two different ways at once, all while being a very believable and like resonant character. Like she continues to be a resonant character for me, even though she's taken this darker turn.
Well, and I think the show leans more towards Babby, but she was a Babby who was shown something horrific, which I'm taking as like a check mark in my theory of, maybe Sochi is the destroyer, right? Because what the fuck did Commodore O show Dr. Girardi in that mind meld?
I mean,
Whatever it was seemed fucked up. And Rizzo had a line of like, you know what you did, Hugh? You let Picard and Sochi go, but you've also doomed tens of trillions of people all throughout the galaxy, right? Like, so what the fuck is Soji going to do? Now, it is possible that Commodore O has done some kind of trickery of implanting memories into Dr. Girardi instead of showing her something that is actually going to happen. And also, as far as I know, a mind meld isn't supposed to show you something that's going to happen in the future. So there's still some unanswered questions. But whatever Dr. Girardi was shown seems pretty horrific. And
but
so,
Sophie, these are enemies of the values of the Federation, okay? These people must be liars. How could they be telling the truth? No, I mean, obviously I don't know that. But like, I think there's a pretty consistent defensive way of looking at this. Like, look, I know Commodore O's a Vulcan and everything, but that doesn't, I don't believe in race essence. And I believe that, first of all, did you see her consent ethics with the mind meld? The mind meld is a very intimate practice. You don't just fucking walk up to someone and mind meld them. That's fucked up. Like,
it was very manipulative. Let me finish my thought. Like,
okay.
I want to clarify that Commodore O is clearly fucked up and evil. There is a poor consent with a mind meld, which I think is actually like, I don't want to like dwell too much in a dark place, but like that's actually really fucking brutal, and it could be considered like a form of like assault, like a sexual assault, but with
it's like a violation. Like
very rapey.
Yes,
like Vulcan have like a really consent practice thing with the mind meld. It's well established in canon. And in Voyager, when Tuvok uses mind melds and like interrogations and stuff, it's considered very like taboo and shocking.
Right. But so there's that aspect, but there's also the aspect of like Commodore O is working with Zhat Vash, or at least as far as she knows, Tal Shiar agents. Like, So I'm not trying to say that Commodore O is a good Christian who did nothing wrong. What I am trying to say is that perhaps the situation with Soji is complicated, and I still maintain that that just murdering a person, because Soji is a person, Dodge is a person, just murdering these people out of fear of what they might do is wrong. But what I'm also saying is that it could perhaps be the case that there is something we don't know about Soji that might indicate that she could go full Terminator, you know? And if there's that potentiality, like, that has to be dealt with. And I think that might be the twist at the end of the season.
I've an interesting new moral quandary for you all. Okay, this is brand new one. I just come up with it there. If you could travel back in time, would you kill baby Hitler?
I'm going to agree with Jeb Bush on this one and say, hell yeah.
Yeah, Jeb Bush was asked this on his campaign.
So that's what.
and he said, hell yeah, and became a sort of anti-fascist meme.
But this whole thing is it's basically, would you kill baby Hitler? That's the whole plot. It's kind of like Picard's an asshole. Should you kill baby Hitler?
But I think what this moral quandary presupposes is that Soji is uncomplicatedly baby Hitler or baby Terminator, baby Destroyer, which I think the way the show's going to go is that the twist at the end of the season is going to be Soji isn't baby Hitler or baby Destroyer. Soji has some complicated programming error or some complicated thing that. So here was my thought, which isn't like super well founded, but what I saw for the first half of this episode with Soji was that Soji was so traumatized that my initial theory for this episode was that what if Soji becomes so alienated and so distrusting of everyone and everything and so unsure that she just kind of something within her snaps and she just starts destroying everything. And what if the thing that caused that was the Zot Vash reaction to her to begin with? Like, if the Zot Vash didn't hunt her down, she would have never known that she was an android. Picard would have never been involved with her, and none of this would have happened, and the Zot Vash themselves created the Destroyer by trying to destroy it. Does that make sense?
The clench reaction is the instability.
Indeed.
Yes.
Yes.
Soji would have never become the Destroyer if they hadn't made her so alienated and so distrusting. She at the beginning of this episode, she doesn't know what is real, right? And
Picard maybe kind of fucked up here.
What's that?
Picard makes a series of mistakes about Soji's mental health by accidentally revealing information that, when entering Kestra's brain, is like, oh shit, you're an android, huh? Like, you know, says to Kestra, oh, Commander Data was her father. Oh, so you're an android. Like, let's not. And then she's like, fuck everything I believed in, you know, my whole, like, my parents, my sister, my identity was a lie. And Picard's like, well, no, your sister wasn't a lie, but she's dead. Like, not great bedside manner there, Picard. If we're getting to the lecturing Picard series, the lecturing Picard portion of our show, this is, I think, you know, the main critique I have. Picard also Picard was busting her chops about being distrustful.
That was worse, in my opinion.
I think that was the worst thing he did by far. It got rightly scolded for it.
Yeah, Troy let him have it.
I think ultimately Picard has to tell. You can't keep this from Soji, but I think he wanted to be candid with Kestra, and Kestra is a child who just blurted out the natural conclusion of this. And I don't blame Picard as much for that. I think Picard should have been like, hey, I can't talk about this right now, Kestra. I think we just need to go home and go to your house. I want to visit your parents, and I need to rest for a little bit. And then after they had a chance to chill, be like, look, Soji, this is what's going on. This is who you are.
Yeah, I guess they were already on the way.
Counselor there for the the reveal.
Right.
Yeah, I guess they were on the way. Like they were on the way to like Picard didn't have like a lot of time to tell her that she was an android, in a gentle way. And so it just sort of slipped out. And then from there it slipped out. You had a sister.
I mean, they had time, I think. I think they had enough time to get into that before what's the name of the ship? La Serena gets there. But he kind of goofed it. And I think that is like an understand. Like if I were in Picard's shoes, I can totally see something like that happening to me. I think the thing that I definitely wouldn't have done is been like, oh, what are you, some kind of cuck for not trusting me? Jeez.
Yeah, the good old snowflake treatment.
What happened to Picard as being like an expert like diplomat and all that stuff?
Well, that's what Troy says. Be Picard, be Captain Picard. You need to have empathy.
Yeah, be patient, be kind, like
be the guy you used to be.
Right. Something happened to him in his alienation from the Federation and disappointment that he kind of lost touch with that aspect of himself. And it's I feel like the show is kicking his ball so much that there has to be more to it. I think there has to be a reason. Like perhaps one of the things that is going on with his health is affecting his mental capabilities because it's something related to the brain, if I remember correctly. Yes, because all good things. It's something related to his brain. And so I wonder if this is causing like a mood disorder within Picard.
I don't know. I mean, we'll see. We'll see what comes up with his health because it was brought up again in this episode.
Yeah, Riker and Troy seem like the only two of the people we know in this show, and the Doctor. So there's three people outside of Picard who knows that Picard's life has a clock on it right now. And so I think that's going to come into play. Or maybe he's just bitter and alienated and is trying to reconnect with not former Admiral Picard, but Captain Picard. He's trying to find that TNG character that we all know and love. And he's struggling to do it. And he like fucks up a lot in this show.
Yeah, that sort of it's a common theme in Star Trek that like empathy, it's kind of idealist, maybe it's a bit idealist, but empathy is what makes the Federation what it is. This like heart and this like caring for the suffering of others. Like it's something that comes up a lot in the Deep Space Nine episode Past Tense, when they're looking back at the 21st century, at around now, basically. And, the massive thing that's missing from our society is that we've forgotten how to care because social problems seem too complicated.
Yeah. I mean, and I think if empathy makes one idealist, then call me an idealist. I don't think that's true, though. And I don't think you think that's true, but I get what you're saying. Like, kind of vulgar sense of understanding of materialism, empathy is irrelevant.
Borg Marxism.
Yeah, Borg Marxism.
Metaphysics, Julius.
I think humans evolved an empathetic aspect of our personalities. I don't think there's I don't take it to the same degree that Brett Bookman takes it in his book Mutual Aid, but we do have that capacity, and I think we've lost touch of that capacity, and so has the Federation. I think Federation reflects the 21st century you see in past tense more than it reflects the hopes of one Gene Roddenberry.
Yes, so perhaps we should talk about our final thoughts.
Yeah, final thoughts here.
You first, Kyle.
All right. Yeah, so this was definitely I don't know, it's strange. It for the most part it felt like a filler episode or like a it's like the Gaiden part of the story a little bit. Like you get this Troy Riker kind of story for the A plot, which was I enjoyed. Like I don't mean it was bad in the sense that it was filler, but there's not a lot of huge plot beats that happened. But then the B plot is like, oh, okay, you're just gonna kill off Hugh, and Girardi may or may not have attempted suicide.
So yeah, she consumes some kind of very specific uranium something compound.
Yeah.
Which that read as a suicide attempt to me, and I thought maybe that the tracker went offline by accident. On the other hand, Girardi's a scientist. Maybe she consumed a uranium compound that put her in a coma, but also deactivated the tracker because she feels guilty about her betrayal.
It's both,
Yes.
I think.
The show does a good job of setting up already that Rios is suspicious of Raffi, between young baby scientist and like recovering like crack addict ex Starfleet. Like, who does Rios immediately suspect as being the traitor? And Girardi tries to confess to both of them this episode. And that's what made it the most look like a suicide attempt to me. And also when Auntie Raffi is trying to make her feel better over cake.
I love that.
There's a really, heartbreaking scene where Girardi says to Raffi, essentially, she says a nice or a good person or something along these lines. And Raffi says back to her, more like the, I forget what it is.
The remains of a good person. You could put me together and make a good person when the situation calls for it. And I think right now the situation calls for it. Which, like...
And then Girardi just breaks down crying because that's exactly how she feels.
Yeah, I mean, in a lot of ways, like, the things that make an addict are the things that make a generally alienated person.
Yeah, and Picard's assessment of the situation is that the crew is decidedly motley in character.
Yeah.
That's true, but he does have a moment of honesty where he's like, I fit in there.
Yeah. So no, I think that is ambiguous for sure. Because that sort of like being unable to confess and then like having that suspicion deflected onto Raffi is just like really upsetting for Girardi. And I think she like vomits like 3 times in this episode. Like the A plot in this episode is very like elegiac, and the B plot is just like really intense,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I would never describe this as a filler episode, but for plot reasons, I understand why you'd say that, because Troy and Riker are such big characters in my heart. And so having their future fleshed out to me seems like one of the main things that I was hoping for in this show. One of the main potentials that you have for a sequel to 90s Trek is that you can see the future of these characters. It's what makes seeing 7 of 9 so cool. What makes seeing Ichab so upsetting?
Or Hugh for that matter.
Yeah. Hugh both, because Hugh gets, his time in the sun. And it seems like Ichab was in Starfleet for 10 years before being hacked to pieces. So there was like a heroic period of Ichab. Bring back Ichab.
Yeah. Oh, are you done with your thoughts, Kyle and Esri?
I would just say I enjoyed the episode, despite that sort of like very incongruous A plot B plot. It's almost an A plot B plot reversal. You would expect the opposite, but no, the punchiness is all in the B plot. So yeah, interesting.
But you just gotta. And these will be my final thoughts. In order to understand how that's the A plot, even though it's not motivating the greater narrative. That's the greater motivation for having a sequel to 90s Trek. Where are they now? Where are your friends? What is it like when, what are their relationships like? Troy and Riker are a lived-in old couple. They've had great joys and great losses together. Like, it's very rewarding to see, Dad Riker palling around with Picard, like, by the lake as old friends. Like, it feels real. Like, they did a good job at depicting what the future of our friends are. Like,
yeah, absolutely.
And let's not forget Baby Hitler. But I do think my critique of about 5 shows ago was that I think it's just going to be a posse thing, and I'm still waiting for the plot for a show that's quite plot driven. It's weirdly character driven.
Well, yeah, follow the evidence. Follow the evidence, Tom. Like, Star Trek is not really plot driven. The plots are almost always excuses for character study and development,
or philosophical study. But this
or philosophical study. That's quite true. So yes, it can go either way. The plot is almost always a MacGuffin.
Yeah, no, that is definitely true. But I think that it's one thing when you have that exploration taking up one episode, but it's another thing when it takes up what I think has been 6 episodes in a row of posse building. And are we finished posse building yet? Is there a major is Geordi to come? Is Geordi in any trailer?
No,
I don't think so.
I haven't seen him.
Do we think that we're done now? Is this like end of posse?
I hope not. I want to see more shit. Bring back Cisco. Where's Cisco?
Oh, yeah, I completely disagree. If you take issue with bringing back 90s Trek characters and just see that as simply posse building, then I'm pro posse building, and I hope the show is nothing but posse building.
You change your tack. You were agreeing with me about 2 episodes ago. You are a turncoat.
I am a turncoat.
God damn it!
Well, the show's
this episode was just too good.
I mean, they're doing a good job of like filling in some blanks, even though they, R.I.P. Echeb and R.I.P. Hugh and Dr. Maddox. And God, if they bring back anyone from Deep Space Nine, they're probably going to kill them. Wait, don't bring back anyone from Deep Space Nine. We're fine. It's okay.
Already?
Only Quark.
Only Quark.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah.
I don't want Quark to get killed. So, okay, I've been patient, but I want to say something now. So, I think that this is why my views have changed on the posse building thing. If I never interpreted posse building to be character development. If character development is what you would call posse building, I'm pro posse building. There's also one thing that's changed my views as well about this is listening to a podcast called The People versus Star Trek Voyager. They kind of make the same case that Esri has made, in that like the thing that makes Star Trek good, in particular Voyager, is when they focus on the characters and the interpersonal conflicts and relationship building between these characters, and whatever space MacGuffin that's out there threatening Voyager is just an excuse to get these characters to interact and to build up relationships and conflicts and resolve conflicts. And that's a part that's important. And Voyager is less good when it's more focused on the MacGuffin and less focused on the characters. So I think if the show is nothing but, this kind of philosophical backdrop of like the end of Utopian Federation and trying to save Soji, and that's just a backdrop for these character development, then I'm okay with that, honestly. Like, I think that would be a pretty good show. Now, there was something... in response to what Kyle was saying, I don't think of this episode as filler as much as I think of it as table setting. And oftentimes, a table setting in the context of 90s Trek two-parters, table setting is often like kind of a pejorative, right? But I don't think it's always necessarily a bad thing. I think you can do good table setting. And when your table setting includes, character development, and it includes like seeing where Riker and Troy are in the future and what their family life is like. I think table setting is actually quite good, because you get the table setting of discussing with Soji who she really is. That's really important. Seeing Soji do the Data head twitch was like super endearing, and it was interesting that you never saw those kind of robotic movements by either Daj or Soji until Soji learns the truth about herself, right?
So cute.
It's very cute.
Yeah.
And so I think this episode was, the A plot in particular, I should say, was very much table setting. Really, the C plot, I guess I would call it, on the Borg cube was very table setting. The thing that seemed to move, maybe not plot necessarily, but character development forward, and I guess to a lesser extent plot, was the B plot with Dr. Girardi and the La Serena crew. I am of the pretty firm opinion that what Dr. Girardi was trying to do was primarily deactivate the tracker in her body and secondarily suicide. Suicide wasn't the goal, but she was willing to let herself die in order to stop the tracker. So I think the compound that she made was very specific for that reason. I think that's also why I didn't realize this until Kyle brought up how much she vomited this episode. But I think she was having a kind of psychological reaction where she wants this tracker out of her now. And her body, the psychosomatic reaction in her is so powerful that she keeps vomiting. But ultimately, this tracker is now in her blood. She can't get rid of it by vomiting. And so she has to inject this substance into her, which causes the tracker to go away. I don't think it's incidental that the trackers that Narek lost the tracker after she did this. Like, I think that was purposeful on her part. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Damn it.
I was just going to say, like, if you think that they're just table setting, like, they must be table setting outside of vomitorium. That's how much table setting going on.
God.
We have been saying table setting a lot.
Well, I think it's an appropriate description. I think filler is overly incendiary. It's fair. It is indeed the bridge to the next arc of action, and I am okay with slow episodes, for sure.
Filler brings up this notion that you see in anime a lot, when an anime is going to surpass the story pacing of the manga it's based
not
on.
That. Yeah, those episodes are just complete trash. This reminds me a lot more of like if we want to like put this in like manga anime terms, this is like a Gaiden episode where it's like, oh yeah, and what was Riker and Troy doing? What were Riker and Troy doing? Let's go find out. Like,
Give me the slice of life anime with Riker and Troy.
Yeah.
Yes,
Star Trek Picard
anime.
Riker Gaiden.
That's so cute.
Yeah, I do love this. I'm looking forward to having more of these like character details filled in. Obviously, there is a tension here between making a compelling plot and catching us up with all of our old friends. And, hopefully we can do more in this universe and keep seeing the future of Star Trek and see where these characters and new characters, are ending up without, gumming up the plot too much for Tom, I guess. Because Tom's instincts are good, but I don't know. God, I love catching up with people. If there were 26 episodes in a season, you could do a lot more of that. But you got 10. We only got 3 more of these left until season 2.
I just don't think I like slow paced shows, but I just don't think the quality in the writing or perhaps the acting is up there with it to do a Better Call Saul or take your pick.
Well, weren't you happy to catch up with Troy and Riker?
I'm kind of indifferent to it. It kind of feels like a band reunion. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, I don't know, some random REM are getting back together again. They release a new album. You're like, all right, the album's kind of shitty compared to the classics. I'm not slagging off that much, but
No, I know what you mean, but like, isn't the kind of cheap rock band equivalent to getting the band back together for an old adventure like we used to a little more metaphorically apt when you're talking about like the TOS movies or something, where they literally get the original cast back together to literally do the same thing that they did in the show? Where this, it's like, everyone is like gone through all kinds of shit and are like fundamentally changed people, and they're doing some like artsy like wink where you get like one fleeting episode with these characters that you have so much attachment to, and their lives are marked with tragedy and
yeah, but
confusion and
I,
like sort of settling with life in a way that you don't, this doesn't feel like a cheap band reunion in that way.
no, like for me, it's like they don't commit fully to that, as in they do, but then they have a full-on plot at the hardcore plot going at the same time, and it's kind of like a mash of styles. And to me, like so far, I don't think it's true to any one of them, and it feels a bit kind of a melange instead of like a clearly defined thing. It's not as
Yeah.
plot driven as Discovery. Discovery is, I think, a lot more like nearly by the numbers, plot driven. And I think Discovery works better so far for me as a show. But you know, yeah, I think so. I think this is. I just feel like, you know, I, I don't feel hugely drawn to the re um defining of most of the characters. You know, I probably, if I was to say who the characters I like that have been in it most the second time, it's probably weirdly Riker, who I don't like in the Next Generation. I find him very, very hammy. But in this one, it seems like he's. I kind of liked Riker, but yeah. So that's just my general overall take on it. I know I don't want to be seen as like just being overly negative, but that's my general take on the show so far.
Yeah. Did you see when Riker gives Picard a hug, he smears Parmesan cheese all over his back jacket?
That's
yeah.
very Riker. Oh my god.
That's so cute.
Oh,
Yeah.
Like,
nice.
he's such a cute chef dad.
I think, Tom, I would agree with your assessment of like the general composition of the show. That sort of tonal juxtaposition has been like a constant thing from the very beginning up until now, where it's like there are two different shows happening in the same episode. And I still don't really know how I feel about that. Like, I don't. At first, it seemed just like production was really rushed. I'm kind of waiting to the end of the series to see how I feel about how it all comes together. But I think you're right in identifying that.
I have a question in regard to this, because I'm not like a film person, like all I know about like production and movies and film theory, quote unquote, and all that is from listening to other people who know this stuff talk about it. So my thoughts with this episode in particular is that this was done intentionally. Like, it's a contrast. It's like a sweet and sour. You got the grimdark plot, B and C plot with, Girardi committing suicide, with Hugh getting murked, and Rizzo and Elnor fighting on the Borg cube. You have that aspect, and then you have, that contrasted with like the sweet, kind of slow, more psychological, conflicting thing with Soji trying to find herself and find truth and learning to trust Picard. But it's in this like very peaceful, serene setting. Like, you have explicit physical conflict with the Borg cube. You have a physical conflict within Girardi, who vomits and then kills herself, basically. And then you have the psychological conflict within Soji. And I think that's like kind of like the uniting theme. You have one that's explicitly physical, one that's mostly psychological with physical side effects, and then you have all psychological. But there's a theme underlying all three plots that it's about conflict in I don't know. I mean, I guess a lot of shows are about conflict, so that's vague. But do you see what I'm getting at?
Yeah, there's a kind of parallelism there. I think that, you definitely see Girardi and Soji both dealing with revelations that have kind of shattered their identity. It could have been a little bit neater, but yeah, I definitely see that there is a thread there.
Yeah, Sophia. What you're getting at is that it's like a polystylist thing, and it's, I don't know, in sort of in representing a sort of fragmented human condition, you end up with a smattering of styles. You end up with kind of fragmented ensemble sort of plotline cast things. It's deconstructing like narrative or whatever from TNG. Like it's really, and it's doing it in a rather harsh way. It's a very harshing nostalgia kind of thing, because it refuses to engage with the past in a way that only makes you feel good whole time.
Yeah, I really appreciate that as a direction for the show. It's been very good on that.
Yeah, I think that's the best bit of the show, to be honest with you. But like, if you're asking me what I would like the show to have, for looking at what it is and what I preferred it or liked it to be, I would have pretty much liked it to be essentially purely character driven about like Picard's fall. I don't even know how much plot in essence you need to do it. I think that would be the strongest way you could have done it. Because the pacing of the show is like, if you watch a very slow paced show, like say Better Call Saul is amazingly slow paced. It's slow, and then it's fast, but it's kind of fast with the main characters. But in this, you kind of have a weird thing where it's like the major characters are slow, and compared to fast in another thread. And for me, it just kind of feels a bit kind of jumbledy. That's kind of my feeling of its style.
Yeah.
I wonder if, kind of building off of what Esri was saying and thinking about the theme you see presented in the opening theme of the show, maybe it's intentionally fragmented, and maybe it's like not a bad or good thing, but a style that might rub some people the wrong way, but something that's intentional.
I don't really care about the author's intention, frankly. Like, I want to assess the work as it is, rather than saying, like, let's read the intention of the director into the work. So that's why I'm saying I'm reserving judgment on it until it's finished, because then I can kind of see, well, how does it come together?
I guess that's fair, and I'm not saying that we need to only interpret this in light of what the director or writer's intention is, but I guess what I'm saying is perhaps there is a style that's being done that's not normal, perhaps, that...
Yeah, that's fair.
Based on what one person's read of it is, outside of their intention, some people might not care for it, which is fine, but I think it's still important to... I don't know. I guess I'm trying to think about how to say this without saying like you have to interpret it through the author's intention. But I think having that knowledge allows one to view it, to assess it more accurately, if that makes any sense. Like, if it's just a jumbled mess by mistake, I'm not going to view it as warmly as I would.
Well, a lot of Star Trek is. A lot of Star Trek is a sort of jumbled mess by mistake. And, like, it comes out kind of cool. honestly.
Mistakes can be awesome though. Like the extreme queerness of Top Gun is almost entirely accidental. Like
it is the gayest film of all time.
And that was not intended. It was just like a number of production mistakes that ended up creating that aesthetic. And it's kind of fantastic.
It's very bizarre. It's so bizarre watching it back.
I think I hear you, but I think this is not a mess by mistake. It's a mess by design, because it's a show about fragmentation. Like, everything's fragmented. Everything that is
has
fragmented
a shattered mirror.
Picard.
As a shattered mirror that turns into Picard. Like, it's totally. Like, and I think this is maybe like a more normal stylistic thing on TV than we're giving it credit for. And I mean, I don't really know what the landscape is for, like, high dramas or whatever. And
that's fair. I don't watch a lot of TV, so that's fair.
I really don't know if this is a truly adventurous show, or if it just feels adventurous compared to syndicated sci-fi from the 90s. Like
I think it's a little bit crude, I suppose. Not that Star Trek hasn't been goddamn crude in the past, but I do think that I think it, we can make loads of, I feel like we can make lots of kind of excuses for writers by talking about complexity of plot, and kind of, for me, it's like, I honestly, I don't care if the plot is complex once it kind of aesthetically works as a thing. And for me, not so much. Like, I prefer as an actual thing of its genre, I think Discovery is better done than Picard.
That's so funny. Yeah. Hard disagree. Just like Discovery, the more I watch Discovery, the more I'm like, all right, these 2 seasons were pretty messy. Like especially the second season, it has like some high highs and like then does some things I'm not so fond of. Like, and the first season is, I think, probably a little more consistent, but like, it's also attempting a bunch of things. And I mean, you want to talk about something that definitely came together as a mess by accident. Like, a lot of Discovery's production has, writer teams being pulled in the middle of production, like, a number of times. Like, so there's a generative chaos going on there that sometimes it really fucking works. And I really still love Discovery. But, Picard seems much more disciplined and confident as a production than Discovery. And I'm glad that they had literally Discovery to, experiment with, to try to do something with before they attempted something like Picard.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I think Discovery is much more accidentally chaotic and all over the place compared to Picard. I think intentionally complicated and fractured or not, I think it's totally fair to judge it based on your preferences and viewpoints on. I think it's totally fair to say it's not like that, and I'm not trying to disagree with that. I just think, for my taste, I really like the contrasting darkness of the La Sirena and the Borg cube, and then you go to the light setting of the Riker Troy compound, and not with the knowledge that just underneath the surface, Soji is just as dark and messy as La Sirena or the Borg cube. So,
all right, and we'll leave it there, because remember, everyone, taste is just a projection of class. So
that means I am aristocracy. Oh yeah,
we're engaging in class domination by talking about our feelings instead of and our aesthetics, instead of focusing on the utopian themes. Anyway, that's okay.
If taste is a product of class, then by any Leninist definition, I have the correct taste.
Well, I think it's we're about an hour 40 in. want to say cheers and live long and prosper?
Cheers and live long and prosper.
Live
Live
long
long and prosper.
or
Yeah.
edit long and
Yeah.
die.
Edit long, die young.
Yeah.
We got a
Yeah.
very funny. This is probably not going to end up in the podcast, but we have a very funny comment. I forgot to promote it, so we didn't get as much comments this last couple times. But we got Stephen T saying Soji is going to become the Borg queen. Oh my god.
That was my original theory, but I'm less confident in that at this point.
Well, maybe she just attracts the new Borg queen, 7 of 9.
Oh, I don't know about
Your
7 of 9
universe,
becoming the Borg queen,
Soji 7
Yeah, and so
ship.
7 of so the destroyer, recreates the Borg queen in 7 of 9. Dun, dun, dun.
Maybe what Soji is just the attractor. I think what's more likely is that Soji just brings the Borg back. That not even that she becomes the Borg queen or 7 of 9 becomes the Borg queen, but she does something accidentally to get the Borg back into the Alpha and Beta quadrant.
I'm just waiting to see
shall
like
see.
I'm just waiting to see if it's like if they're the hair my hair theory is still going to come true.
Not giving up on that one, are you?
In final episode, writers were listening to Tom.
Oh man, it would be so majestic if it was actually.
Yeah. The Tom O'Brien Institute of Hair Theory.
And it flicked back right to that one moment. I went, there. It was actually me. It was I, Leclerc, in the kitchen with the candlestick.
Played us like a fiddle.
Yeah,
Damn.
it was I, Leclerc. That's British people might remember, or Irish people. There was an 80s comedy in England called Allo Allo, and it was set in France under Nazi occupation, and it was about the French resistance, and it was a really brilliantly bad comedy. It was hilarious, and there was a Belgian police officer who would come in into the show, walk into the pub where the main scene was set all the time, and he would say, "Hello, it is I, Leclerc," and it was hilarious every single time. Just thought I'd clarify that for all the one people listening live.
Yes. All right. We already said bye. I'm ending broadcast.